So this class is going to be an intro to HEARTSafe Holland and CPR, and it will be followed by hands-on CPR training at 3 o'clock. You don't have to stay to do it, but we'd encourage you, if you haven't done the training already, please stay and learn how. It's very simple, as you will learn from our wonderful educators here. Anybody can do it. Anybody in this classroom can do it. You know, even a person with a walker probably could do it if they had to. So don't be afraid to learn and be prepared. You might change someone's life, like help them live. So anyway, now we actually in the program outline, when I first had to submit it, we only had 2 presenters, but we were really lucky to have an additional presenter, Dr. John Kramer, who's a physician. He started his undergraduate education at Ferris in pharmacology. Then he went to U of M and got his MD degree and pursued residency in emergency medicine and a fellowship. So he's board certified. Then he worked as an attending physician and director of various emergency medical services and was the director of the emergency medicine residency at Michigan State University College of Human Medicine. So he's got a foot in both camps. So we have you go blue, go green. We're all covered here. And then he did move on and do some work at the federal level with the national, I always forget this, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and he retired recently from there. And he's enjoying his retirement, but he's sort of only pseudo-retired because he still stays. He's got his thumb in emergency medicine and EMS programming. So we're really grateful. He's going to do the part about CPR and how it's evolved and how you can change someone's life by doing it. And then we also are really lucky to have John Shea, who is a longtime resident of Holland and got his degree also from MSU, a BA in business, and has worked and played here, and currently I think is on the Historic Society Commission. You're the head of that or something? Until last month. Well, then he still pretty much still is. And the reason he is here is he is a cardiac arrest survivor, and he benefited from a rapid, quick first-person response, not necessarily EMS. And that really was your impetus, as I understand it, to advocate for founding HEARTSafe Holland. And then, not to be left out, but Angela Lound is a firefighter and an EMT. She also went to MSU, got a BS in, yes, go green, got a BS in chemical engineering, and then a master's in sports psychology. So it'd probably be a really interesting story to find out how she ended up as a firefighter EMT, but that'll be another day, I suppose. She currently has been with the Holland Department of Public Safety for the last 3 years, and she is the HEARTSafe Holland Administrative Chair, and she is one busy lady teaching these classes, responding to all of our 911 calls, and we're really grateful that you coordinated and helped us put this together today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you so much, Dr. McPherson. And hi, everybody. Okay. The thing that's always challenging when you're doing early afternoon presentations is guessing whether folks have just completed lunch and how long they're going to be awake, depending on the significance of the, oh, I really need to take a nap after lunch physiologic response. And it is very much a physiologic response. It's natural for the body to do that. I am so honored to be with you today. As was mentioned, I've been very fortunate in my career. I've had an opportunity to do a lot of things, be involved in a lot of things, both at the local, state, and national level. And the opportunity to talk with folks about things that are extremely important to me personally is extremely gratifying. This is a little bit more gratifying, and I'm sure that you've heard this time and time again, but our daughter graduated from Hope. And shortly after that, moved out to Phoenix, is now married, has been teaching in Phoenix for 12 plus years. And the only way she would move back to Michigan ever is if she had the opportunity to be on Hope's faculty. So she is, it was an unbelievable experience for her. And as we were engaging with the Hope community, it was a great experience for us as well. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about CPR. How many of you have been trained in CPR in the past? Okay. Anybody been trained or retrained in the last 4 years? Okay. What we're going to talk about, well, when we get into the hands-only CPR, and I'll make a couple of comments about it here, is totally different than what you were trained, which is a good thing, because as we'll talk about, CPR training for the general community, for citizens in general, was way too complicated. And quite honestly, from a health perspective and talking about doing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, that caused a lot of concern on the community's part. Remembering, am I doing 5-to-1, 15-2, 30-2, compressions to ventilation? We don't care. And in point of fact, as we'll talk about, it really doesn't make any difference. I want to point out one thing here on the slide, and I'll make sure that I don't inadvertently advance it. Anyway, I put this picture up at the last minute. Our granddaughter, who's 8 years old, lives down in Florida, was up a couple of weeks ago, and we were sitting around the dinner table, and she knows I'm an EMS physician, and we don't talk about it a whole lot because it grosses her out. But she said, "Grandpa, I learned CPR in school." She's 8 years old. She described, okay, we determine whether they're conscious, whether they're awake. She didn't say conscious. If they're awake, that's a good thing. If they're not awake, that's a bad thing. If they're not breathing, that's a bad thing. And if they're not breathing and they're not awake, we call 911 and we push down on their chest. 8 years old. That was phenomenal. So we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about the history of CPR. I had the question mark after then, because we know sort of when CPR started, as we know CPR today. But there are some things that suggest that folks were at least trying CPR type concepts very early on. And I have a technical question for you. Does anybody know why the question mark is funky in Microsoft Word? I've never been able to figure that out. Oh. Thank you. All right. Super. So again, I've been very fortunate. One of the fortunate activities that I'm now involved in is HEARTSafe Holland. And that's really the only connection that any of my past has to do with what we're talking about today. We're going to spend a couple of minutes talking about each of those things. And were I a true educator, I would have listed objectives for the various topics. But we're going to touch on each of those things because they all are critical components of what happens when somebody experiences a cardiac arrest and you dial 911 and we get the system involved. Okay. Before we get into talking about specifically cardiac arrest situations, I want to make a distinction between a cardiac arrest and a heart attack, because TV shows don't portray them accurately. The media oftentimes mischaracterizes what happens. So when we're talking about CPR, it is in the context of a cardiac arrest, sometimes referred to as sudden cardiac arrest, sometimes referred to as sudden cardiac death, okay? In a cardiac arrest, the heart is not beating effectively. Period, end of discussion. You're not circulating any blood throughout the body. If we want to get real technical, there are a couple of heart rhythms that cause cardiac arrest. The one that folks talk about most commonly is called ventricular fibrillation. And that's just when the heart is quivering. It's described as a bag of worms, and that's very much what the heart looks like when it is fibrillating. So the heart is not functioning at all. It generally occurs fairly rapidly, although it can be part of the progression of a cardiac arrest. Oftentimes, folks who experience a sudden cardiac arrest are standing up in front of you talking and then just go down. And oftentimes, they don't have that sense for long enough to even say, I don't feel good. So, if you look at the Damar Hamlin video from a couple of years ago, the football player that went down, he was walking and he stumbled and he was down. So sudden cardiac arrests occur very rapidly, usually without notice. The patient is unconscious. As I mentioned, their heart's not beating, so they don't have a pulse. And when you learned CPR in the past, they always told you to check for a pulse. Don't worry about it. Don't waste time checking for a pulse. And they're either not breathing or they have abnormal breathing. There's a condition called agonal respirations that occurs when the heart stops, the brain and the lungs are trying to continue to get oxygen, and the victim or patient will go and nothing for 10 or 15 seconds. And then, so when folks are questioned and somebody asks them, are they breathing? Well, it looks like they are breathing, but effectively not, because it's not getting any air in and it's not moving around the body. So we have changed the breathing criteria to they are either not breathing or they're breathing abnormally. If somebody is unconscious and unresponsive and is not breathing normally, start CPR, because a cardiac arrest is fatal within a number of minutes. It requires CPR, as we'll be talking about, and it requires defibrillation, as we'll be talking about. When folks talk about a heart attack, medically it's called a myocardial infarction, or MI. It is a condition where the heart is not getting enough oxygen for the demand that the heart has to function effectively. The patient will be experiencing symptoms. Most typically, we talk about chest pain, and the classic is there's an elephant sitting on my chest, and you've got numbness in your left arm, or you're short of breath, you feel nauseated, lightheaded, dizzy, those types of things. Those are fairly common symptoms associated with a heart attack in men. Symptoms in women are significantly different. And it wasn't until the last 20 years that we really started to appreciate that. So, ladies, if you're starting to feel a little lightheaded, you get sweaty, you feel sick to your stomach like you're going to throw up, have somebody check you out. Okay. It is much more common for women to experience variable symptoms. Men, the classic, there's an elephant sitting on my chest type of discomfort. They tend to be common, or they tend to be, yes, they are conscious, they'll have a pulse, they'll be breathing okay. And that requires immediate care from EMTs, paramedics, get to the hospital, because there are all sorts of medications and cardiac cath interventions and things like that that early on can correct a myocardial infarction or minimize the significance of the damage to the heart. Okay, and the distinction between cardiac arrest and heart attack? Great. When we talk about CPR, CPR is really a combination of three things in an ideal world. Abnormal breathing, so we somehow supplement their breathing. As we'll talk about, that's not a part of citizen CPR quite as commonly. artificial circulation, which are the compressions, and then a defibrillation or electrical shock, which can be delivered by the paramedics and in the hospital with manual devices. That's why we have the automated defibrillators that we'll be talking about here. So there is, if you want to, and I'm not a historian, but historians will tell you that there is a report in ancient Egypt of Isis reviving Orisis, which, depending on which story I've read, was either her brother or her husband. And in fact, may have been both back then, who knows? But Isis gave the breath of life. There are two reports in Kings 1 and 2 of Elijah, two separate events, Elijah reviving a boy by breathing into his mouth and treating his arrest. In early days, there were a whole bunch of things that were tried to re-stimulate the heart, if you will, and to get breathing going again. And I'll have some cartoon type examples in just a minute, but inflating the lungs. When they had bellows, they would just put the bellows into the person's mouth and activate the bellows, which actually is not a bad corollary to what we do now in EMS. There's a device that's called a bag valve mask, which is a mask that goes on the patient's face. The EMTs or paramedics or folks in the hospital will manually squeeze a bag. Anesthesiologists do this all the time in surgery. Will manually squeeze a bag to breathe for somebody with supplemental oxygen. So the concept of using bellows was really not that far off. There were a lot of ways where they just tried to stimulate the patient. Flagellation, applying heat and cold, vigorously shaking or rolling the body, a number of techniques. They tried hanging people upside down, rolling over barrels. And we'll talk about fumigation in just a minute, which is kind of disgusting from a physician's perspective. I can understand it a little bit, but so the bellows and just trying to breathe for the patient. Using reeds or sticks or whatever was available and swat the dickens out of the person to try and get their heart started again. Application of heat, hopefully not direct flame, but an application of cold. All tried. Whoops, whoa, come on, John. I mentioned, yeah, it's called hanging. They don't mention that they're hanging the person upside down, but that has been tried historically. Rolling folks over a barrel or putting them on horseback and seeing if the horse can stimulate the heart to get going. This is a demonstration of the fumigation. The concept behind it was this is grossly enough. A physician with a tube inserted into the patient's rectum, and the physician smokes and blows the smoke through the tube into the patient to try and stimulate the heart. Now, there's any smokers here? Okay. There actually is a little bit of a physiologic reasoning behind that because tobacco can be a stimulant. So, they also did this, putting the tube through the mouth down into the stomach, but it just aesthetically is not terribly appealing. There were reports of doing CPR in trapped victims. This is just an example of somebody who's stuck on a pole and they go up and actually, if Angela, what's wrong with that picture? Yeah. On this one, the hand position is the wrong place for compressions. What they should have their hands up here. They're actually kind of doing a Heimlich maneuver to try and expel a foreign body here. And then over time, we've evolved to the mouth-to-mouth respirations and mouth-to-mouth with chest compressions. So a lot of things have gone on in early days. In the 1700s, they started to recognize the importance, particularly in drowning patients. And there were discussions of both chest compression and mouth-to-mouth ventilations to try and revive victims of drowning. In 1740, the Paris Academy of Sciences officially endorsed mouth-to-mouth ventilations for drowning victims. And over time, we also developed several manual techniques. The two that are most commonly talked about are the Sylvester technique and the Holger-Nielsen technique. This is a demonstration of the Sylvester technique, where you have the patient supine, laying down on their back. You pull their arms up, theoretically, to expand the volume in the chest and draw air into the chest. And then you bring their arms down over their chest and squeeze the chest to try and compress the heart. The Holger-Nielsen method is the same thing with them lying prone, lying on their stomach. You pull their arms up and then push on the back with the idea that you're compressing the chest. We were teaching and doing these things in medicine until the 1950s and 1960s. Okay, so even though it started early on, we were continuing to follow those along. What we now recognize as real CPR really started in the 20th century. This is when we first started, first started talking about putting chest compression and rescue breathing combined on a regular basis. Any pilots here? Have you ever heard the name George Cryle? Okay. George Cryle was an anesthesiologist. As applicable here, he started doing external chest compressions on both dogs and humans, and identified that it would circulate the blood around the body. Folks still preferred internal cardiac chest compression, but they recognized that pushing on the chest helped circulate blood. The reason that I asked pilots is Cryle was the one that developed the anti-G suit for military pilots. He did actually a lot of cool stuff. And then other folks around the country identified the effectiveness of external chest compression. The initial experiments most commonly being in dogs and or cats, but mostly dogs. And then the first recorded successful human defibrillation, meaning a shock to the heart, was in 1947 when Dr. Beck used this gross kind of little machine to shock the heart of somebody whose chest was open for surgery, and he could apply these two little paddles directly to the front and back of the heart. And really what has led now to what these cool little devices can do without a significant amount of difficulty. Both Dr. Elam and Dr. Safar were on faculty in Maryland. And Dr. Safar, who's demonstrated in this photograph, an anesthesiologist, really did the seminal work on, yes, we can compress the heart, but we have to do ventilations along with the heart compressions. And he realized that there's enough oxygen in the blood for several minutes. And we'll circle back when we talk about hands-only CPR. This is why we don't have to do mouth-to-mouth immediately after CPR. And he specifically developed the technique of head tilt, chin lift maneuver, which is what's being demonstrated here. There's a Now we can say it's a funny little story. We could no way in the world get away with it in medicine these days. Dr. Safar's experiment, this is a live person, firefighter and medical students who volunteered to be part of Dr. Safar's experiments. They were chemically paralyzed and sedated to allow him to do mouth to mouth and prove that it worked effectively in a patient who couldn't breathe. Now, I can tell you, I'm not going to volunteer to be, well, I would now with the knowing some of the people that I know, but well, and knowing that they would do an adequate job, but this is chemically sedated and paralyzed live people who were kept alive by Dr. Safar doing his mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And then the other seminal event having to do with closed chest cardiac massage was seminally done by these three guys, and they couldn't be Jones, Smith, and Anderson. They had to be Cowan, Hovind, Knickerbocker, and Jude. But if you, to EMS physicians, if you say Knickerbocker, they know exactly what you're talking about. They were working on external defibrillators, and part of the process was they were able to definitively confirm that when you were putting paddles on the dog's chest with enough force to make the defibrillation shock effective, that was also enough force to circulate blood. So they published this study in 1960, and we've gone on since then. This is when we did the combining mouth-to-mouth to external cardiac compressions. The American Heart Association very rapidly picked up on that and said, ooh, we need to do this, but we can only do it to physicians. We can only train physicians because they're the only ones who, sorry, it's the Heart Association, who are smart enough to be able to do this. I'm obviously being a little facetious, but this was new. It was only trained to physicians. And it wasn't until the mid to late 60s when we started training ambulance attendants, because we didn't have EMTs or paramedics at that time, and started to train civilians. Along the defibrillation line, there was a cardiologist in Belfast working at the Royal Victorian Hospital, Frank Pantridge, who developed this really cool, sophisticated little defibrillator. It was about this big. And it had the two paddles, one paddle right here. The other paddle you can't see is on the lower surface of the defibrillator. He took that device, he put it in ambulances with cardiology fellows and nurses and an ambulance driver, and they would respond into the field and demonstrated very early on that the quicker you can defibrillate somebody in cardiac arrest, the better the chance for survival. Now, those of you that have had CPR in the past probably learned this type of scheme. And candidly, healthcare providers are still required to be certified in this type of CPR. It works very effectively. It needs two people at a minimum to work effectively. And depending on whether it's a single rescuer or multiple rescuers, it defines the compression to ventilation rate. We want to have the compression rate about 100 to 120 times a minute. And as we'll talk about with hands-only CPR, that's still what we want to try and do. Adequate compressions, and then full chest recoil, minimizing interruptions for ventilations and things like that. So when you talk with folks, particularly healthcare providers, they will still talk about being required to be certified in CPR. And it's a 4-hour course, and the Heart Association and Red Cross and other folks do it. But this is not what we're talking about. I want to spend a minute just talking about defibrillators because that's the third component of CPR. We talked a little bit about manual defibrillation when we were talking about Dr. Beck early on, but it can occur either internally or externally. Internally is when the chest is open, you can put the electrodes right on the patient's heart and do so. This is another picture of one of the first internal defibrillator devices. This is a picture of officially the first external defibrillator device. You can't see it well because but this is on wheels. It had to be because it weighed about 80 pounds and it was an AC defibrillator, so it had to be plugged into the wall. Automatic defibrillation started in the late 1970s with this device, weighed about, I believe, 12 pounds. You defibrillated the patient by putting this electrode on their chest and putting this, putting this airway in their throat. So you're defibrillating the heart through the chest and through the throat. We have gotten much more sophisticated since then, as we'll talk about in just a couple of minutes. The automated external defibrillators that exist now and are demonstrated here are really fully automated. You turn them on, the device will tell you to not touch the patient. It will analyze the patient's cardiac rhythm. And if it is a shockable rhythm, will tell you to push the button to charge. Well, some of the devices will charge on their own and then tell you to push the button to deliver the shock. The other concept that you may hear is that of public access defibrillation, and that's really just trying to put all of these things together. We want to make sure that citizens are well trained in CPR, hands-only CPR. They know where AEDs are located and then can deliver early CPR and use an AED when it is available. And we talk about all those things as the chain of survival. I'll demonstrate that graphically for you in just a minute. AED is automated external defibrillator. Yep. This is just another, this is a selfish question because this is Dr. Eugene Nagel, whom I worked with for a short period of time. And the early monitor defibrillator that was used by the Miami Fire Department in the late 1960s. This weighed 60 pounds. Okay. This is generally the first commercially available portable defibrillator that EMS crews, EMTs, and primarily paramedics at that time had the opportunity to work with. It was a LifePak 4. It weighed about 45 pounds and was affectionately referred to as the boat anchor. There's a story that says Physio Control did test this by dropping it from 20 feet and it stayed intact and continued to work. I don't know if that's true or not. In comparison to the very sophisticated monitor defibrillators that folks in your community, in our community, are using now. It will get a 12-lead EKG, which is hospital emergency department quality. It has manual blood pressure, respiration monitoring, all sorts of things. So the units that you have in your community now are extremely sophisticated. I want to mention this very briefly because sometimes you'll see it on TV. Sometimes folks will talk about it. And there is very much a West Michigan history associated with it. This is a mechanical CPR device. It was the first one on the market. It was called the Thumper. Okay. Developed by Michigan Instruments in Cascade over east of Grand Rapids. Okay. And was the only external or mechanical CPR device on the market for a while. This is the new version of the Thumper. There are two others that are available, the Lucas device and Auto Pulse. And what they do is they're essentially applied to the patient's chest. And this piston is in the appropriate position on the chest, and the piston will just go up and down, up and down, up and down, and do compressions. It is used most commonly when there's an expectation that you'll be doing CPR for a long time. There candidly is a lot of controversy right now in the emergency medicine community about whether these devices are more effective than manual CPR. If you've got enough people and you can do manual CPR, that's generally the way it should be done. But if you don't have enough people, you're going to be transporting for a long time, you may see a mechanical device. And for those of you that have watched The Pit, or I don't think they showed this on the old ER show, but they demonstrated this on The Pit. AEDs automatic external defibrillators are becoming much more common around the community. And that's part of the focus of HEARTSafe Holland program that Angela will be talking about in just a couple of minutes. But certainly in airports, you'll see a cabinet like that on the wall with either a sign like this or a sign like this that demonstrates the location of the AED. This is just another one which tangentially shows another life-saving kit associated with it, stop the bleed components, which are tourniquets and dressings for folks who are hemorrhaging significantly. And there are AED kiosks that are available in some areas of the country. We're looking here in Holland about the feasibility of having kiosks. So, you know, if you're walking down 8th Street, and that's where we've sort of modeled one of them, you don't know what businesses have AEDs located in them. They're typically not on the external walls on the street. So this is a kiosk where you just go up to it. There are two options. One is you open it up and there is a horribly loud klaxon noise that goes off and gains everybody's attention. You can also hardwire these to the 911 communication center so that when the door is open, the 911 dispatcher automatically knows the kiosk, the AED kiosk on 8th Street in front of the Knickerbocker Theater was just taken away. And then they know to dispatch police, fire, and EMS. And the sophistication continues. This is an AED device that I have. It is about so big and weighs 2.5 pounds. To operate the device, you pull it off the wall or pull it out of its pack and pull that tab, which immediately turns the device on, brings out the electrodes, the pads that you put on the patient. And this device can also wirelessly be connected through your example, home Wi-Fi to the dispatch communication center to say, you know, Kramer's device went off at his home. I mentioned the chain of survival earlier, and this is a combination of both bystander and professional rescuer activities. But if you look at the graphic, there are, 6 components here. 4 of the components are lay rescuer. They're you and me, okay? The 2 later ones, the professional rescuers, are the second half of it. So we want people to very early on recognize, and the SCA just stands for sudden cardiac arrest, unconscious, not breathing normally, assume it's a cardiac arrest. Call 911, start hands-only CPR, find out if there is an AED available, and use both CPR and the AED until Angela and her folks arrive. There is, well, we have over here the AED that's in this building. So Hands-only CPR is really the focus now, where unless you're a healthcare provider, we don't care about the certification stuff. As I mentioned early on, Sapphire discovered that there is enough oxygen in the blood when a patient stops breathing for several minutes. So the reason we used to do mouth to mouth is because we thought the oxygen level dropped off precipitously and we had to provide oxygen to the patient when they're not breathing on their own. This will get a little bit technical, but bear with me. When you breathe out, you have 21% oxygen in the air that you're breathing out. Every minute, the body uses normally about 4 to 5% of that oxygen. So if you've got 21% in your body, then you've got 3 to 4 to maybe 5 minutes of oxygen before your body is at 0 level oxygen and you need somebody to start breathing for you. So chest compressions only, this overcomes the resistance that folks had. Ick, I don't want to do mouth to mouth. And candidly, 20 years ago, when we were more concerned then than we are now about infectious diseases, there was an appropriate concern. So recognize that the patient is not responsive and not breathing normally. Don't assess for a pulse, ignore agonal respirations, call 911 and start compressions. This is an example. HEARTSafe Holland has been doing hands-only CPR at a number of community events. John Shea, who will be talking with you in just a couple minutes, attends almost all of those. Angela is at many of them. But you may have also seen in airports kiosks to learn CPR. If you got 10 minutes before your flight, just go over and push on the mannequin, because all they want to do is determine that your hands are in the right place and that you're pushing deeply enough in the chest. And it just reinforces. We have extended this concept to the 911 dispatch communication center as well. And this just demonstrates the flow chart that we want the telecommunicators to follow, but it is very quickly 911, what's your emergency? I need an ambulance. They'll ask what your location is because they want to get that, but is the patient breathing? No. Is the patient awake? No. Is the patient breathing normally? No. Okay, then I'm going to talk you through CPR. And they will tell you how to do it. We used to, in the communication center, we used to say, do you want to do CPR? And that frightened a lot of people. So now the response is, we will tell you how to do CPR. Stay on the phone and I will talk you through it. And that's the whole concept behind all of this. Again, to start CPR as soon as possible. We've already talked about this. I'm not going to spend time talking about it. Just to reinforce to you what to expect in the city of Holland and in the Holland Grand Rapids metropolitan area. The specifics are a little bit different depending on the jurisdiction, but in the city of Holland, when 911 determines that there is a cardiac arrest, they will alert the police department, the fire department, and the transporting ambulance company. All of your police cars now have automatic external defibrillators in them. All of the fire response devices have external automatic defibrillators in them. Again, the goal to get there and to shock the heart as quickly as possible. You know, if you live outside the city, Life and AMR share most of the Holland area response activities, but in the city of Holland itself, it is AMR. Just, I'm going to be scientific for just a second to reinforce why this is important. This is a chart that demonstrates when the cardiac arrest is first witnessed. And the graphs are, this is somebody whose heart starts and is sustained. the red is somebody that's admitted to the hospital, and this is someone who is discharged. So if a 911 responder, yeah, I was confusing myself here. If a 911 responder yeah, I'm sorry, yes, okay. Only because they have more capabilities to treat the cardiac arrest than bystanders do. The important one here is bystander witnessed as opposed to unwitnessed or nobody does anything. So, and this is nationwide numbers. Across the country, 13% of folks will survive if they're witnessed by a bystander, as opposed to 4 if they're not witnessed. And actually the 4 is somewhat of an optimistic number. If you look at how they survive bystander CPR versus no bystander CPR, it's almost twice the rate. And if you look at automatic defibrillation, whether by a bystander, first responder, or responding EMS, meaning the ambulance crew, you'll see that when bystander AED is implemented, 4 out of 10 victims nationally survive. So this is why we want you to do it. I'm going to skip over this stuff because Angela is going to be talking about both the HEARTSafe Community Program and the Pulse Point AED Registry. And we'll leave that up for a minute. That's the QR code for HEARTSafe Holland. And John, please. So please, sir.
So in those cases, no, thank you. Sorry. In the 4 townships that surround Holland, is it in that case, it's the sheriff that shows up? Is that really the only difference in the local township fire department? Is that really the only difference?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I can't guarantee it, but I believe that all of the sheriff response vehicles now have AEDs. No, I know the sheriff's department used to have an advanced life support E-unit. That program has stopped, but I think they have AEDs in all their patrol cars. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay, so let me say that.
Dr. Kramer is correct that the sheriff will respond and may often have a defibrillator with them. They're often a 1-person unit though. So what really is going to make the difference is when the fire department and AMR arrive on scene, because you have multiple people working on multiple things. So it's a team effort.
My first CPR class was in '88, a long time ago. I took a refresher class, I think it was 2016, when I started having grandchildren, to learn how to work with infants and children. I
Yes.
wanted to be safer.
Yep.
So are you going to address any of that today and over here?
Well, we will, but there's really nothing to address. If it's an infant, a small child, a large child, or an adult, you do the same thing.
I don't know if this happens to people who experience cardiac arrest or not. I've never worn a G suit as you were talking about, but I've done aerobatics. And when you do aerobatics, when you pull for positive Gs, your eyes, the vision gets smaller and smaller, but you stay conscious. And it's only about a second. And you always know that if you release the pressure, if you release the pull, that your vision will come right back.
Yep.
So I don't know if the patient experiences the same thing or not.
They can, but typically do not. Some folks will experience a very brief episode of, I feel nauseated, I feel sick to my stomach, I'm lightheaded and dizzy, and it usually is a matter of 5 to 10 seconds at the most. And just, yeah, you were talking about the tunnel vision, which we all get when we're hyper excited and are working. Yep. Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah. And if you look, but in most sudden cardiac arrest victims, their eyes will immediately dilate. Their pupils will immediately dilate.
Okay.
All
well,
right.
we'll trade.
Well, thanks
Let's-
for asking the difficult questions
Yeah.
of the doc.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, how many of you would know a fellow named Jay Peters here in Holland? Yeah, usually it's at least half the room. Jay was on city council for many years and another fellow from Holland was Steve Stegeman. Steve is a retired EMT, and Steve was working so long ago that his first job was to drive the ambulance, which was owned by the funeral homes. And the ad read something like this: "Hey, college kids, want to drive a 500 horse Cadillac station wagon as fast as you possibly can? Apply at Dykstra Funeral Home," or whichever funeral home he worked for. So at the beginning of Steve's career, he couldn't get any training. There was no such thing offered. And then, of course, over time, he became at least an EMT, if not, was he a paramedic as well? So, anyway, Steve tried to start something like HEARTSafe Holland maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And he invited Jay Peters to come across the street to his house. He lives in the Washington School apartments, condos, and said, "I'm just going to teach people how to do hands-only CPR." And so Jay walked across the street with his wife, Kristen, and they went to the class. And Jay left the class, I think, thinking, well, okay, but that'll never happen because I'm not a medical person. How would I ever come across somebody that needed CPR? 2 weeks later, he and I were in a truck together. We were volunteers for Community Action House. We were waiting for a space in the dock at the Meyer north of Holland. And he looked over at me and I just didn't look good, he thought. So he reached over and slapped me a couple times. Now, a legitimate reason to slap an adult, doesn't that sound great? And just as Dr. Kramer said, my eyes were open, but no focus, nothing going on. And he realized that exactly what had happened immediately. So he dialed 911 as he ran around the truck. He got me out of the truck, which is about this high. That wasn't real pretty. He said, 2 of us getting to the ground together. And he probably started compressions within 30 seconds. EMT arrived. They put me in an ambulance, took me to Zealand. They shocked me a couple times on the parking lot, just in the rain. And then air flighted me to the Meyer Heart Center in Grand Rapids. I was out for 30 hours. When I woke up, they told me everything was fine. I was 7 days later, I was released from the hospital with no restrictions. So I was as lucky. I was better than 13% lucky. I was really, really lucky. And the big step, when I would thank people in the hospital, and I did, I was hugging people like crazy. They would say, "Well, that's great, and you're welcome, but it's that first link in the chain that counted." The person who very skillfully puts a stent in, as I had done, can't do that unless somebody like Jay Peters had started off by giving me the compressions immediately. So that's the importance of those compressions. When I left the hospital, as I said, I had no restrictions, and I immediately joined the group that Steve Stegeman and Jay and others had started. And I don't get credit for starting it by any means, but it's a wonderful event, and it has brought us not only HEARTSafe Holland, which we have achieved and we will achieve again every year, but the other 2 things that you see out there that are Pulse Point and Pulse Point AED. And while we're going to introduce Angela Lound, who is an EMT and a firefighter. She can carry a 35-foot ladder and deploy it. And in 2025, she is the Holland's Firefighter of the Year.
Thank you. I was going to suggest that we play your story, but I think it's actually much more effective in person, literally to be standing here alive and to be able to share that amazing story there. But thank you. Yeah, I'm so very, very lucky to be able to work with Dr. Kramer and Mr. John Shea with this fabulous organization. And he just amazes me all the time when we go out to trainings, because it's very effective when we show this video. And basically the video is exactly what John just explained here. And he'll kind of sneak in the room, as the video is playing, and people eventually kind of do a little bit of a double take, and it really, you can see how it hits home on their faces, where this is a situation where people every day didn't wake up expecting that they're going to be pounding on their best friend's chest but saved their life because of the knowledge that they had gained. And you can see that as a real example over here. So enjoy working with the both of them very much. Let's see here. As I mentioned, I am a firefighter EMT. I work part-time with Park Township Fire Department, where I reside for the last 7 years, and then I've been full-time here with the city for 5. So very, very lucky to work in this community. It's a fabulous community, and we are continually pushing to save more lives, just like John Shea. See if I can move over here. So I actually put this presentation together for various other communities that are interested in HeartSafe. They heard the stories, they've seen some news clippings, whatever what Holland has achieved here, and they're now starting to contact us and say, what did you do? How did you do this? You know, how long did it take? They have all a bunch of great questions. And I realized, okay, I don't think this is going to slow down at all, as it shouldn't. You know, we want this to continue. We want this to expand. And I thought, well, when we were asked to come to give this presentation, how great would it be as sort of a sales pitch to all of you? In a sense, you know, people all around the community in Ottawa County and the other counties is where you have family, you have friends, you have connections. So if I can sell to you how important this program is, maybe you can talk to your friends in other areas of the county, because eventually we will love to become not just HeartSafe Holland, but HeartSafe Ottawa County. Right? And then maybe HeartSafe Michigan. Detroit is now a HeartSafe community as well. That is an amazing story. And we'll talk about numbers here and how they achieved that. But if we can keep this ball rolling, so to speak, that means that those numbers that Dr. Kramer showed us are just going to keep going up in terms of the survival rates that we have going on here. So come along with me on this journey here in terms of what does it take to build a HeartSafe community and have that succeed. So it all started here as Dr. Kramer and John were talking about with a gentleman named Steve Stegman, who's a now retired paramedic with AMR. And I came across a funny photo at the fire department, digging through some old photos from 1975, black and white photo, where he was standing there demonstrating CPR to a bunch of burly firefighters at the time there that didn't look too pleased. And he said, I was 18 years old at the time, trying to teach a bunch of firefighters how to do CPR and stuff. And it was a pretty cool photo. And then he's been on a mission ever since to continue to save lives there. So he approached the fire department. Captain Tinney is one of our amazing leaders there. And he said, hey, I really want to get this program started. I think we should really involve the fire department because you're such an integral part of responding out to the community there. You know, how can we get this going? Captain Tinney kind of looked around and said, you know, who's foolish enough to get going in this? Looked at me and said, you, all right. And asked me if I would be interested in getting going with the program. I jumped at it. I said, absolutely. What do we need to do? So there's a number of different programs around the country where you can become heart safe. There, when we sort of researched this, we came across the Citizen CPR Foundation, and we really liked this one because it is a joint effort between the American Heart Association and the American Red Cross. So we said, okay, there's a little bit of weight there in terms of its validity there. And so they got together, their board, so to speak, is comprised of a lot of volunteers from the ER physicians community, first responders, firefighters, all across the country who have the same mission to save more lives through hands-only CPR usage. And so when you go to become a HeartSafe community, one of the first steps is to contact them. And you say, hey, we're interested. We're getting ourselves on your radar. All right. This is what we want to do. And they're there to sort of hold our hands along the way. They actually linked us up with Johnson County, Iowa, was a community that had just become HeartSafe certified. And they said, hey, this is going to be your mentor community. And so we got contacted. We did a call with one of their leaders there, and they kind of ran us through what to expect, what to do, and was there to help us along. So that's sort of one of the first things that we did. These are the 13 criteria. I'm going to run through them just quickly here and then go step by step as we go. But establishing a high-performance lead agency and community team, use data to drive regional strategies and local tactics, train citizen rescuers, that in my mind is one of the most absolutely critical pieces. Recognize and celebrate the actions of rescuers, educate citizens on how to respond to sudden cardiac arrest. Train emergency communication center staff in telephone guided CPR. Dr. Kramer already talked about that a bit. Plan for and practice responding to sudden cardiac arrest. Strategically place AEDs where they are available 24/7 for the community. Establish a 911 integrated AED registry. We're going to talk about that. That basically is pulse point, a really critical piece. Equip first responders with AEDs. We talked about that, and now how the police, the fire, and AMR all have them in their cruisers. Train the EMS clinicians in high performance CPR and resuscitation. That's a no-brainer for us now. Establish a process for quality improvement, annual public reporting, and develop meaningful health promotion prevention measures. All right. So sounds like a lot. When I first looked at this list, I felt a little bit lost, to be quite honest, there, but we worked our way through this. Okay, so going back to number one, here was establishing a high performance lead agency. Okay. So what we did is, that first step was Steve Stegman came along and approached the fire department and said, hey, can you sort of be our lead agency to give some validity, some legitimateness to what we're trying to do here. And we said, okay, but we can't do this alone. We're busy running 4,000 calls a year. We've got our primary goal is to respond to calls coming in. So we're going to need some help, okay, in order to do this. So from there, we reached out to Holland Hospital, American Medical Response, Ottawa County Department of Public Health, Ottawa County Central Dispatch Authority, the City of Holland, the Rotary Clubs of Holland, the Macatawa Area Coordinating Council, also known as the MAC, Evergreen Commons, of course, our wonderful ER physician, Dr. Kramer, and a number of volunteers, including our cardiac arrest survivors, John Shea, also Lisa Cardillo, and we just picked up a third survivor, Gary. What is Gary's last? Yes, well, I'll think of it in a few minutes, Gary, there, and who is phenomenal and helps out at a number of our different events. And so together we have become HEARTSafe Holland board. We meet once every about 6 weeks with all the different agendas, things we're trying to do. We've accomplished becoming a HEARTSafe community. That's great. What's next? Right? What are we trying to do next? And so we have sort of tiers of different goals that we're trying to get to, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But one of those biggest goals is how do we now start pulling in other communities, get them interested? How can we support them? How can we really drive home the importance of what we're doing here and how it can affect everyday families around our community? 2 is to use data to drive regional strategies and local tactics. So what really this boils down to is that there is a national program called CARES. It's the Cardiac Arrest Registry to Enhance Survival. And what this does is that it's collecting data from all of our hospitals that participate in the area every time that there's a cardiac arrest that comes into the hospital. And if they're surviving, whatever happens in that whole process, that data is being collected and sent to a central registry. So that information that Dr. Kramer was pulling up earlier with all the different percentages, he probably pulled that from he's nodding in the back. He pulled that from the CARES data so that he knows it's a trusted source of information on who's surviving, who's not, and what happened. Was there a bystander that was present? Was it an unwitnessed arrest? Was it witnessed there? So participating in this particular program was really important to the Citizen CPR Foundation, because it just means that we're getting, making sure that all that data is continuing to be collected, which only then makes us better if we're understanding in that whole progression of CPR and AED throughout time. How do we continue to make this process more effective to save more lives? So this one, basically here, what happens is that every year Holland Hospital, who is our participator in CARES, sends us the data. There we look it over, we see, okay, we've had this many bystanders participating. We're seeing an increase here of bystander participation. That's great. If it starts to level off, how can we start to re-engage the community in new ways to get more participants participating with that, in those first few moments. Train citizen rescuers. Okay, this is a very interesting criteria of the 13. To me, it's the big elephant there, because what Citizen CPR Foundation wants is that they want 15% of your community trained every single year in hands-only CPR. Okay. So for the city of Holland, we had to define what our population is. Okay. And so the way that we defined it is that within Holland city limits, all right, 14 years and older. Okay. So that came out once we did the math, is that every year we have to do about, 4,300 people trained. So it sounds like a lot, but we said, okay, how can we do this? And what's great about this is that we can go to all different kinds of events throughout the summer. Right now, every Thursday night, we're showing up at Thursday night street performers. As people are walking by, we pull them in. Hey, we're performing CPR. Come over and help us. We don't want any donations, anything like that, but we're performing there. We'll go to all the different festivals throughout the year. We have a canopy, we have our mannequins, we have tarps, we'll throw everything down. And it's really fun to watch that. Oftentimes it's the kiddos that will, come in and approach. They're not afraid to walk up to the strange little half naked mannequins, on the tarps and stuff. They're like, hey, what is that? Well, let me show you. It's the parents that take a little bit more coaching. Your kid is doing this. I'm good. No. This is a family event. Get down there and save lives. But it's a lot of fun because you get to people once they start getting into it and they realize, okay, no, I don't have to put my mouth on anybody. It's not that, way anymore. You can see them start to relax, all right, and say, okay, this is something I can probably do. All right. And it's real fun to see the conversations. Mr. Shea is a superstar in getting people in. He has no problems walking up and saying, hey, I got something for you to do right now. Come on, 5 minutes. All right. And gets them going in that. So that's fantastic. We get contacted by businesses. Some businesses need to have their employees certified. They actually need to go through a certified process where they get an e-card from American Heart Association or American Red Cross. That's perfectly fine. The fire department can do that. I am a certified CPR instructor. So if you have a business that needs certified employees, we can handle that for you. If you don't, and your employees are like, hey, we just want to learn this because we know that it's something important and we haven't been trained in a little while, can we go through a hands-only class? Absolutely. We will come out to your business. We will train them. We usually have a pretty good time. It takes about an hour and a half. John Shea and I often go out together and do these classes. And by the end, usually people are smiling and having a pretty good time because they realize, and again, this is not quite the way it used to be. Church groups, schools will also contact us. We'll go out there. And the other nice thing is that we don't have to do all the training, all that 4,300, right? Holland Hospital is amazing, and they train all of their staff every year, and we get to count those numbers. So I have a contact at Holland Hospital. She said she tallies it all up and she sends it over to me about once every 6 months so I can kind of track in my gigantic Excel spreadsheet where I'm tracking every single training that we're doing to make sure that we're hitting our numbers appropriately. Because when we go to get recertified in 3 years, because it is a 3-year certification to be a HEARTSafe community, I have to show all the documentation that we did what we said we were going to do, right? In terms of these 13 criteria. So that's where my big, huge Excel spreadsheet comes in. Yes, and then Aquatic Center, MVP, private instructors, they'll all send us their information. I'll tell them, thank you so much. You were X percentage of the total, and, tell your employees, great job, for what they did, because like the MVP and Aquatic Center, sometimes they're 1 or 2% just by themselves with the number of people that they train throughout the year. And that is fantastic. So this note down here, again, I recently talked with Grand Haven, Ferrisburg, and Spring Lake, a group there that's interested in starting up. So if you know people out there, you can start nudging them, if, hey, get involved. And just said as an example, because of your population, if you follow the same, pattern that we did here, you're looking at training, a little over 2,000 people every year. So it was just kind of giving them an idea of what to expect going through that. So recognize and celebrate the action of rescuers. Citizen CPR Foundation realized how important it was to recognize those people that actually stepped in and started to try to help, okay? Because it can be a scary thing. For those of us that do this every day, you get a little bit desensitized to it. Your training kicks in, you know what to do, stuff like that. If you don't do this every day and all of a sudden you stumble across, there's somebody on the ground that is not breathing and they don't look very, not the right color, and because their blood has stopped circulating. Some people are like, I'm not comfortable with that. And that's okay. That's an okay response. But if we can get people to positively recognize others for taking that first step forward of, I'm not sure I'm going to remember exactly what to do here, but I'm going to try. And then it's amazing how people will follow behind that. Once that first person takes that step forward and works to try to help others, other people just start adding right on in. And so recognizing when people do this, recognizing when people take that courageous step forward and say, I'm just going to do whatever I possibly can here in this situation. We actually do events where we'll say, hey, we did this recently with when Gary had his cardiac arrest. We had an event where he was on stage and some of his rescuers were on stage, and we thanked them. And Gary had a very heartfelt message to them. He was talked about that day. He had just gone to his son's track meet. He was at home grilling with his family. And he, went to a location to fill up, I think it was on propane there. And that's where he went down. Right. And somebody stepped in, a couple people stepped in and were able to save his life. So we recognized that. And just that whole night was a night of celebration and getting people thinking a little bit more about, what is this process? How could I potentially help? Where's my comfort level and what can I do? So it's really, really important to Citizen CPR that we start that, because that's all a part of creating this community that understands the importance around community and hands-only CPR. Educate citizens on how to respond to sudden cardiac arrest there. So we created our own website, HEARTSafeHolland.org. Originally, when we first started out and we had zero money to our name, we created a Google website there. We ran off a Google website for a number of years there, but we weren't able to get enough marketing out there that we were hoping for, but it at least was a start. And it's what we needed to be able to demonstrate to the Citizen CPR Foundation that we were working at it, right? It was a first attempt and a first step. We eventually got some grant money to be able to create this website, heartsafeholland.org. And we had it done actually in English, Spanish, and I believe Arabic. Yeah, so it's able to reach more of our community members that way as well. So if you go on there, you can see different events that are going on. You can learn how to reach us if you want to set up a particular event. There's some videos on there on what to do for hands-on CPR. So it's just a way to basically get the information out there again as to why this is so important and why we are so passionate about it. We also have a Facebook page there that Lisa, our amazing trainer, updates. And John, I think you post stuff on there quite frequently as well with different events that are going on. Yep. They're just, again, helping us to stay connected. We also we had billboards out for a while. We got a grant for a billboard for a month there that was out on the highway talking about Pulse Point. there. And then any other time that we can find ways to put out advertisements of what's going on, we'll do that. But oftentimes when grant money comes in is when we start having those conversations and how to.
There's a guy who paints rocks that say HEARTSafe Holland and
That would
leaves
be you,
them
Mr.
all over
Shea.
the place.
Yes, Mr. Shea does a fantastic
So
job.
the rock painting is a significant part.
Yes, yes. So if you ever see rocks around town, that is Mr. Shea's. They've ended up at the fire station multiple times and yeah. I've got plenty of those. Like, and I've given them away to some kids as well. So yeah, they love them. Train emergency communication center staff and telephone guided CPR and the use of AEDs. So I can't say enough how wonderful Ottawa County Central Dispatch Authority is. They are just leading the way in so many things, and telephone CPR is one of those things. So what basically happens here is that when you call 911 and it links you, and you're in Ottawa County, and it links you up to OCCDA, and they start asking those questions that Dr. Kramer was mentioning, is the person conscious? Does it look like they are breathing normally? And you come back no with both of those. They will probably say, okay, we're going to walk you through CPR, as he mentioned. They have a computer program that pulls up and it just lists, they don't have to have this memorized. Most of them probably do. And it just runs you through step by step exactly what to do. And then they're basically holding your hand through the phone, right, on what is the next step. So even if you take a CPR refresher course, if you decided to go with us today, which we would love, and you're like, you know what, I don't remember every single step that Angela and John talked about, that's completely fine because those dispatchers are now your best friends. And they are going to be walking you through this step by step. And that is a wonderful way to be able to get people who have even never taken a CPR class before to be fairly effective at doing CPR in that moment when all of a sudden it's needed, whether it's a friend or a family member or a complete stranger that they happened upon out in the public. Plan for and practice responding to sudden cardiac arrests. Okay, so what Citizen CPR Foundation is looking for here is that are some of the entities around town in our community planning for on a larger scale with all of their employees how to respond to these situations. It's one thing, right, for us as individuals, if we take on the responsibility to learn how to do CPR. But Holland Public Schools pulled together all of their teachers, all of their staff, all their administrators and said, look, this is important, okay? Because we know it's not just one age group that goes into sudden cardiac arrest. It can be kids. And we've seen a number of examples recently and out in the news of children at school going into cardiac arrest and those teachers and administrators responding appropriately and saving their lives. It's important, right? So Holland Public Schools, the City of Holland, the BPW, they all incorporated into their emergency response plans because there's lots of different emergencies that happen out there, right? You can have strokes, you can have seizures, you can have diabetic issues, you can have cars crashing into buildings, all these different things that are happening. They made sure that cardiac arrest emergency response are in their plans and they practice them. They have days during their teacher in-service days or whenever that is, they run through and they practice these plans and they make sure they know who is doing what, who's grabbing the AED, who's calling 911, all those teams that are ready to go to respond to, again, not only, the older staff, but also the kiddos as well. Very, very important to Citizen CPR Foundation. And the nice thing with that is that, well, if you approach a business that doesn't have a plan, they're like, well, we've never done this before. We're just a small business. American Heart Association actually has on their website, they have templates, emergency response plan templates. You can download it, plug in the correct information for what business you are, how many employees you have, where's your AED located if you have one, and it makes it very, very easy. It's just up to that business to make sure then you go and review it with your employees on a somewhat regular basis. Otherwise, it just becomes a piece of paper on a shelf. American Heart Association. Yeah, absolutely. If you type in American Heart Association Emergency Response Plan template, something close to that, it should pop it up for you in the Google search. Okay, strategically place the 24/7 accessible AEDs. Okay, they're looking, Citizen CPR Foundation is looking to make sure that our community has AEDs available on a 24/7 basis because we just don't know. There's no scheduled time for cardiac arrest to happen. They are going to happen anytime in the night or day, and it does. So do we have those AEDs around town and available? As we talked about, they are in all the police department cruisers. All of our medical fire trucks have them. There is one in the lobby, which is staffed 24/7 right now. So that was enough to get us started. All right, that was enough to get us to the criteria to meet initially, but we're not happy. All right, we want to do more. And so John and part of the team at HEARTSafe Holland is currently working on, okay, where do we want to place potential pods or different cabinets, as Dr. Kramer was showing in his presentation, around town. Okay, 8th Street is an obvious choice. One of the things that we're working on is actually tracking, we'll talk about this in a second, tracking where our current AEDs are and trying to find gaps in those locations. You know, where is it that we're missing an AED, that we really need one, and then trying to move from there. Okay, this 911 integrated AED registry. Okay, so we'll take a step back from this for a second. Ottawa County Central Dispatch already was doing this, but in a little bit of a different way. Before, if you called 911 and said, hey, we think we've got someone who's in cardiac arrest at 123 Main Street. Okay. They type in 123 Main Street, right? And if there was an AED located at 123 Main Street and that business owner or resident had told 911 that was there would be a little note at the bottom of the screen saying there's an AED on site, right? The problem is if the cardiac arrest is happening at 123 Main Street, but the AED is located at 125 Main Street, next house down or the next business down, it's not going to pull up on their screen. So there's an AED that's right there, but they're not seeing it because it's not registered with that particular location. All right. So they were doing it, but it's not as effective as Pulse Point now, which is a software that actually started a pretty cool story. I told somebody here earlier, and it's the same concept, right? There was a fire chief out in California who was having lunch with his buddy who happened to be a paramedic. And they heard the sirens. They heard sirens, and they found out afterwards, after it was too late, unfortunately, that there was a cardiac arrest at the restaurant next door. And the chief just thought, if I had only known that this was going on, I'm trained in CPR. My paramedic friend obviously is trained. We could have gone over, we could have potentially reversed this situation, made it better, right? So that got him thinking about how in the world could we develop a software that would let people know in almost real time that this is happening so that they can respond to it. And also on top of that, we want to know where all the AEDs are so that we can run and grab them while we're on our way over to 123 Main Street to help out. So that's what Pulse Point is. We purchased HEARTSafe Holland, got some grant money, and we purchased Pulse Point, the software, and then Ottawa County Central Dispatch 911, they integrated it right into their CAD system. So they took that, they worked with the software team from Pulse Point, and they actually brought it all together so that now in Ottawa County, you can actually be notified if there is a cardiac arrest happening in a public location, if you're a community responder. The lengths vary. It can go anywhere from 1/8 of a mile up to a mile. Just it depends on what works best for your community. So for example, if you have the software, which you can download free to your phone, if you have the software and you're out at Meijer, you're walking around Meijer just every day doing your business, right? And all of a sudden your phone beeps at you and it's a very distinctive chirp. You look at it, what is that? It'll pull up on the screen, giving the address, 746 East 16th Street, cardiac arrest in process. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm here right now, right? I'm ready. I just took class, or even I just want to help however I can. You can hit, I want to respond to that. And it will guide you right to the location over there to where the people are. And you probably know because there's probably some commotion going on. And you're like, how can I help? I'm trained in CPR. I know what to do. Do you want me to go find the AED? Do you want me to go flag down first responders? What can I do to help in this situation? Right? So if they say, well, hey, I want you to go grab an AED. What's really cool is that in the software, it'll say, here's the location of the nearest AED that's been registered in the Pulse Point software, right? So it'll just guide you right over to it, grab it, bring it back and start using that, okay? Where we're at with that right now is we're still in the process of trying to register all the AEDs in town, right? That takes manpower, people power to go out and say, oh, there's 2 of them, here at my church. You can check on the Pulse Point software. They've not been registered yet. I'm going to take 5 minutes, snap a photo of it, upload it into the system. It's now registered, and it will now show up for anybody who's looking in the area of where the local AEDs are. And that information also then gets funneled right into Central Dispatch's CAD system, so that it now pulls up on a map for Central Dispatch, right? That they can also say, you're at 123, but I see there's one at 125. They can see it visually without having it to be location specific. Such a huge advantage now, having this software and being able to use that. We're in process with it, but as soon as Citizen CPR Foundation heard that we had purchased the software and they were implementing it, they're like, check. Because they're very familiar with the software. They've had so much success out on the West Coast where it originated from. It's very cool software. And someone asked, well, are we seeing any saves? We just implemented about a year and a half ago. What we're seeing is a huge increase in first responders that are off duty, responding to events, not only cardiac arrest, but other structure fires, car crashes, stuff like that. First responders can see all this stuff for other departments. So if you've got a first responder that works for the city of Holland, but actually lives in Park Township, and off duty, you say, oh, Park Township has a structure fire, or Park Township has a cardiac arrest going on right now. I'm going to go over and I'm going to help. So that's what we're starting to see, is a huge increase in cross-departmental cooperation, and then also community responders that can see only the cardiac arrest side of that responding as well. And so we are so thrilled with the response from the community and our responders in doing that. Let's see, equip first responders with AEDs and teach them how. This is a standard, absolutely standard thing that we do now. All of our firefighters, all of our police officers are trained in using an AED and CPR. How do I know this? I'm one of the trainers, right? So myself and Fire Marshal Brett Grindike, we go every 2 years over to the police. We march ourselves over to the police department, and we pull them all in. They have their trainings that go for quite a bit. They are very dedicated to all their training, and we get about 2 hours with them, and we run through all the CPR, all the refresher courses, and they are phenomenal. All right, and then of course with our own firefighters as well as our part paid firefighters there. So we are all trained. This is the same thing. It's just talking about CPR there versus AED. So again, we train both AED and CPR together. Establishing a process for quality improvement and annual reporting. What they're just looking here is saying, okay, you're collecting all this data, you're doing all this training, everything that you've got going on. How are you going to make yourselves better? And so what we do is that we collect that CARES data, from the hospital. We look it over. We see where we're doing well. We see where maybe we could do some improvements. Last year, it was having to do with ventilations. So we have to do with the breathing, we have to do with ventilations. And the piece that we were getting back is, all right, we're very aggressive with, we're firefighters, we're really aggressive with everything that we do. We need to be a little more gentle, all right? Gentle with our ventilations. And so we did some training on that, which found in turn, you get better outcomes and stuff there. And so then also we post that data. So in our, the Holland Department of Public Safety, the fire service, the annual report, we put out all of our saves, how we did on those saves, how we have feedback. We go back and we talk with all our crews about those saves. And also we put up, we've got the CARES data. That CARES data is public knowledge as well. So that's how we're trying to hold ourselves accountable. AMR does the same thing. They do feedback loops with their responders when there was a save or was a close call. How did that go? Hey, this person survived, this person didn't. What can we do better next time? And just trying to keep moving up those percentages of how many people we are walking out of the hospital. Last one here is develop meaningful health promotions and prevention measures for sudden cardiac arrest. This was great because Holland, the community of Holland already has so many great opportunities for health initiatives and healthy living and stuff like that. Holland Hospital has all kinds of fantastic programs. All we had to do was go and link what they were doing to our website there. The Ottawa County Department of Public Health, same thing, great opportunities that they have through there. Even Evergreen Commons, MVP Athletic Club, the Aquatic Center, there's all these great opportunities. We just became sort of a central hub on our website of, hey, if you're looking to get a little bit more heart healthy, here's some things that you can do and programs that you can participate in to achieve that goal. And that's really what the Citizen CPR Foundation was looking for, is how are you getting that information out to your community on to be a little bit healthier living. Let's see here. There's a lot of information. This is just basically here for those groups that were interested in how to develop a HEARTSafe community, just sort of here's the next steps. And we would just kind of run through that. And I gave them a little handout there because I'm not going to run through that whole slide there. But there's support every step of the way. We're actually a mentor community now for other communities that are interested. Saugatuck Tri-Area is working right now to try to get that. Like I mentioned, Spring Lake, Ferrisburg up north is working on that a little bit. There's a couple other communities in Michigan, and then I think maybe Indiana. Maybe we got linked recently. There, I need to follow up with them because they are just getting started. Questions? I know we have run over just a little bit. I apologize for that, but yeah.
Quick question about your
Yeah.
data that you've been collecting and your
Yeah.
quality data.
care
Is that
data?
on the HeartSafeHolland.org site for the community to look at, or is that just internally
I
available?
would have to, I don't think it is,
Okay.
it's public knowledge, stuff like that. So it's something that we could certainly give to people. It's a bunch of numbers,
Yeah.
but if people like to dig through the numbers, they can certainly look at it.
Okay, thanks.
This looks like a terrific program. Thank you for all the cooperation and effort you put together. I would say you put a little punch into Mirabach's tagline, "We get to live here."
Yeah.
So,
Very much so.
just out of the question, did I catch it right that you're trying to train 4,300 of the community members a year? Where are you with that number right now?
Great question. I think last check we were at, and the problem is I don't have a lot of the business numbers collected yet. I have only what we've done and what the hospital's done. So we're sitting at about 35% of that total number right now
For this year.
for this year.
But-
Yeah.
Yeah,
but we-
the past 2 years, we have surpassed the numbers.
Yeah, so they're making it. And John just pointed out too, since anybody in this room has really already kind of gone through the didactic part of the training, you could probably just come right over here and learn on even if you didn't sign up for the class that follows this lecture.
It
You could
won't
just
take
go
long.
there in about 5 minutes, feel like you know what you're doing.
Yep.
sort of.
We would-
Well, at least you know when you call 911, they'll tell you what to do and you've done it once before, so it won't be as scary. So,
It won't, but they tell you having hands-on and getting muscle memory in it goes a
Yeah.
long
Yes.
way. So we would
Just a
love to
thought.
have you. Yeah, so a couple more questions here. I know one right up here.
that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I come from an era when they said you compress the chest, you will crack it.
Uh-huh.
And does that happen frequently?
Frequency depends on a variety of things. I am gonna let John Shea talk about his experience real quick, and then I'll fill in after that. So,
I had 6 broken ribs
Okay,
and it was painful, but it was the nicest pain I've ever experienced.
Okay.
So I was alive.
okay, because that's what I had
They
heard,
can-
and I don't know if I could inflict that pain on somebody.
Yeah, none of the pain
Okay.
started till.
They're gonna be, okay, and also the electric shock, is that something they feel? I mean, are you?
No,
They're not
no, I had
feeling-
to run twice to me and, right.
You know.
So-
And actually, you didn't remember any of it?
Not a
probably.
word.
I mean,
I'm missing, your brain does wonderful things to save
yeah,
you.
just-
I'm even missing the day before in
Yeah,
memory.
kind of an amnesia.
so we can absolutely talk about that, and it's something that we cover in the trainings, there. But oftentimes what happens, versus John's happened to crack, oftentimes what happens is that the cartilage just separates from the sternum there. And we'll go into it more detail. We actually want that to happen.
Mhm.
So we'll talk about that in class. All right.
I just moved into the Warm Friend, which is the retirement, the old hotel Warm Friend. And I was wondering because I have some 90-year-old ladies on my floor.
Yeah.
And, I need to find out, yeah, how do we know if it's appropriate for us to be doing CPR? I do think everybody has a sheet on the back of their
Sure.
door.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll tell you how we respond to that there. So as professional responders, right? Unless we have that do not resuscitate order in our hands and it is signed by a physician and it's not out of date, we must continue along the process of trying to revive them. Right. So I'll leave you to take that information and internalize that however you want to, because that's a very difficult question. Right. And, some people will say, well, they would not have wanted that. And that might be true. But if they don't have that document signed for us as professional responders, it is our job to respond to that. And so it's one of those things, if you're not a professional responder, you are covered under the Good Samaritan Act and cannot be held liable, if you decide to, or if you decide not to, and that's up to you and that's your decision. But that's just how we would respond, to that type of situation. Yeah.
And I've taken care of 90-year-old people who wanted to be resuscitated.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
We-
Yeah, you can't assume just because they're old or even if they
Absolutely
look
not.
really frail,
Right.
that's a personal decision. And, they probably understand some of the risks that might be associated with doing
I see
CPR.
some amazingly sharp and active 100-year-olds around here, man. They are that's my goal.
Is the pulse point available wherever you are? I mean, is it nationwide? Is it?
It's not there. So the community that has that 911 response call center has to have had purchased Pulse Point and integrated it into their system for it to be active. So what's great is that it's available in all of Ottawa County because HEARTSafe Holland purchased it for Ottawa County. It's not available in Allegan. I mean, within the city limits of Holland, Allegan County, yes, but once you get outside the city limits, it's not available anymore. But if you are right on, let's say you live in Allegan County and you spend a lot of time in Ottawa County, you can download it and you see everything that's happening in Ottawa County, right? So, but unfortunately, no, until it spreads to the entire country, it is only available in certain spots. And it'll tell you on there, there's no Pulse Point available in this area if you're traveling.
I was just going to mention too, that a lot of the parks in Ottawa County, especially Ottawa County parks in particular, have AEDs. A lot of them do.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I mean, I always think in our neighborhood, we probably don't have anybody that has one, but I know what it is in the park. So run down there and get it if I had to. So.
And you can come to my house because I own one, so.
Yeah, for sure. So if there are no more questions, we would love for all of you to hang out with us for another hour. We can give you a 5-10 minute break. It's certainly up to you. We think it's a valuable skill set to know. There again, having hands-on and kind of running through that muscle memory, especially if you've not done this in a while. It's fantastic. John and I have a good time. We hope you would too. If you've got to run, of course, we absolutely understand. So.
I didn't ask your permission to say this, but it struck me that we have given them the talking part of our 1 hour class. So if any of these folks want to stay, it wouldn't take as long.
It would not take as long, absolutely. I know HASP, the group is always the best question
Mhm.
answers of any
Yeah.
group I ever work with there, but we can run through it fairly quickly.
One more question here.
Oh,
You
yeah.
said, talking about the AEDs, and you talked about you have one at your house. What kind of cost are they? What is-
Sure, brand new, they're about $1,500. They can go up from there, but about 1,500. Now don't blanch at this, but you can get a reconditioned one. Now, it's not like a car with 100,000 miles. Yeah, you blanched 100,000 miles. It's sat in a cabinet for 5 years or however long it is. Somebody got a new one. They take these back in, they replace the battery, they test them for 100 hours, and they sell them for about $775. So the lowest end would be
Great,
800.
thank you.
So.
I would buy a reconditioned one myself personally. I would have no problems with that.
Okay,
You're an electric car guy.
yeah. Right. Again, they aren't really used. They're just have been in a cabinet for a while. Excellent. Thank you. Great. Thanks for doing that. Thank you.
Very much.
Come on over if you have time.
Yeah, if you want to take 5-10, 5-10 minutes, if anybody needs a break.
Our table happens to be knee height, so you don't really have to kneel down on the ground. And we just hope that the victim would always lay down on a table that's 17 inches off the ground. But we don't know how to make them do that, but. And this, by the way, is your AED that from the building here. So come on over and use this one. I'll get a couple of them out. Yes. Oh,
So that we can face. the
Sure.
way,
okay.
And then that way they.
Yep. Mhm. We're just saying in case someone at home is watching, we want to be as visible as we can. So come around to this side of the table. It's just like the Last Supper. If you people want to be in the picture, you have to be on this side of the table. Yeah. There is a gadget that's a one-way valve that it's like a sheet that goes over their face and you blow in and nothing can come back. And I believe it's in your kit for one of your AEDs here, but that's not the question. That's what I'm thinking, because we've done the talking already. I should turn that off maybe, huh? Yeah, right in the middle. There's a little divot there, kind of for most of us, and it's just a little hollow spot, but it's nowhere near the soft part. We're not doing that. That's the Heimlich maneuver. So it's the hard part right in the middle, and for him with immovable nipples, it's right on the nipple line. So you're putting your hand down, the heel of your hand, putting the other hand on top, or any way it works for you, you can go it that way. And you're going to straighten out your elbows, stand as close as you can, and lean down. Now, this guy's got green lights in his shoulder. I don't. Although I've been thinking about putting them in, but then I got to have a shirt
Yeah.
that's got windows.
What time?
That's right, a shirt with windows. So that's all what we're doing. So want to try it? You can stand. Yep.
Here?
Sit, yep, sure. And get real straight elbows and use your whole upper body to lean in. A little deeper. Yeah, it's deeper than you think. First few times you're fine. A little deeper, little deeper. Not quite. No, I wouldn't say no. Everything you do is helpful, and it's way better to do this badly than to not do it. A little deeper. You had it. It's funny the first time you had it. Let me make sure it's not. Yep, the song Staying Alive from the Bee Gees. The trouble is that's from 1975, and sometimes we have people that don't remember 1975, so, or that weren't there. You'd still be helping, but you would want to go a little deeper if you can. And admittedly, this seems like a lot of violence to do to a stranger, right? Someone you don't even know, so, sure. You know what, come square,
Okay.
and you're going to come 90 degrees from the person, right? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, come around. Sorry, And I'm the one that brought it up, but can you step?
Yeah, Sue, she's got the camera over there.
Yeah. Oh, we got nice picture back.
Might be my best side. Yep, lean in, keep your elbows straight. A little deeper, there, right there. Staying alive. Yeah, it is a lot of pressure. It's rare that a person walks up to the mannequin and pushes hard enough the first time. We're doing great. Yeah, good job. Yeah. Jay Peters did mine for 4 minutes. And please, and yep, come on around those so we get a good camera angle. Either way, yeah, whichever. I put my dominant hand down, but it's not important. Right in the middle, yep. And then real deep. Good. Real good. Perfect. There's the exception. The guy that pushed hard enough the first time. Perfect. And then there's another thing you could do, and now I won't do it because of the camera, but if I got really tired, I might say, hey, can you step in? You'd be standing across from me and take over in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You would reach in and go. And we probably wouldn't even miss a compression. So again, unlike the old method where we would stop and listen and all that and assess, we're not doing any of that. Good job. Yep, we're going to show that next. Well, let's everybody try it once and then I'll get out an AED. Oh, Stan. He's the guy. I'm keeping him around. You keep him around. That's absolutely good job. Perfect. As I said, Jay Peters went 4 minutes and he said he wasn't tired then, but later in the day, he fell apart. You mean, just that strength was Kit. Keep your arms real straight. Use your whole upper body. Deeper, deeper, deeper. Almost, right? Yep, one more, a little deeper. You'd be helping, but you're not getting all the way down. Also, remember to come all the way off because you want the heart to refill. My sound is still on. Is that almost? Let me make sure he's okay. I think he is. Yeah. You're just being too polite, Kit. That's okay. So here's another thing. You look around, you go, hey, Stan, you got pretty big shoulders, step in. You know, so you would just teach someone else to do it. It's fine. It's the same thing if you're tired. And the other person doesn't have to be trained. They just have to watch you. So somebody else, try it, please. And then we'll switch to the AED. Are we still? Yep, right in the center. Yep. And in this case, it's not right in the middle. It's between the nipple line. Oh, you did it too. You went deep enough the first time and then come all the way off because you want to let the heart refill. Perfect. Good job. Try it. That's okay. Right in the middle. Keep your elbows real straight and use your whole upper body. Yeah. Look at that. First time. You did do it. You sure did. You want to double that speed just about. But it's okay. You'd be helping. That's okay. Don't, you're fine. Oh, stop. Oh, I'm sorry. I know. And there's other thing that people will hurt their knees if we put them on the ground. And we think, oh yeah, look at this technique. A little kid came one time and they pushed and pushed, couldn't get the out of it. She said, well, can I just go like this? In fact, one of our survivors had 3 little kids at the time. And after she got out of the hospital, she said, if this ever happens again, you stand on mommy and jump up and down. I mean, it doesn't sound good, but, and when someone puts their heel, I said the heel of your hand, if put the heel of your foot on there, that doesn't look like a nice way to treat somebody, but you are saving a life. How about we switch to AED? This one's a trainer and it will not shock anybody no matter what it does. We say it's a medical device, but it's obviously the consumer version. Sorry. This is Hollywood. We got to do it. Right. So it's obviously the consumer version, right? It's only got a couple of buttons. Guess which color starts it up? Green starts.
Adult patient. If the patient is a child, press the child button.
Let's say no, it looks like an adult. 90 pounds is, you're an adult. Yeah. Up until now, you could have been working through clothing. Now we've got to clear them up. Usually they have a pair of scissors in it. And it will just keep telling me the same thing because I haven't done it yet.
onto patient's bare skin.
So I'll pull it out. Now that's got a little map.
Apply
As we look at the person, never mind his right or left, we're looking at the right side low.
remove packet.
And by the way, somebody else is doing compressions while I say do this. The other one is our left side high,
The picture.
and it isn't very picky about that.
And the on skin.
And I'm
Do
still
not
doing,
touch the patient.
until then, I'm still doing compressions.
Rhythm.
Twice it says don't touch the patient, once to analyze, and then once to shock.
Rhythm. Shock advised. Do not touch the patient.
And I would check and make sure the spouse over here isn't like holding their feet or something, because you might be trying to provide some. Stan, if you'll push the red button. Bam,
Shock. Liver.
and they really jump,
Begin.
and you go right back to CPR. And now it's set up on a metronome for you. Once it's done the shock, right, right. And it'll go 2 minutes, and it'll have you do the same thing again. It'll look, well, it'll look like my red one right there. Let me get that out and I'll show it to you. Or just grab it. Just grab that red one on the floor. So, yeah, you're doing compressions unless it tells you not to. And there's twice that it tells you not to touch, once so that it doesn't pick up your pulse, and once so that you don't share the shock, because you don't want that shock. And it is quite a shock. They said in fact, I was in a rain puddle. It was raining, and they said I really jumped off the pavement. But again, I don't know all that, so. I don't. No, nothing. I just fell asleep. I don't know. I probably did. What you said makes sense. Right. Uh-huh. I would think so. I think it's very much the same thing. Sure. Yep. Also on those pads, it's got a little picture of a child. And that one has no face. That's the back of the child. This one has a face. It's the front, because the pads are a little bigger than these are. And on a child, you'd never get them close. You wouldn't want them to touch. And so for a child, you're going to flip them like this. And at 2 minutes, it would cycle and tell me the same thing again. But it's real. Yeah. Well, except this is real. Mine doesn't actually provide a shock. If I use this one, it would went out. Green button starts it. Just a minute.
Begin by removing all clothing from the patient.
Always cut nose to navel in that direction. Otherwise, you take a pair of scissors and you can poke them like that, and now you got a new problem. In most kits, yes. I don't think mine does.
Is there. Protected cover.
And now it's going to keep saying that to me because I'm not doing it. How would you order it? Just sure. Yeah, there's lots of companies. If you just purchase an AED, and you can decide whether to buy it new at 1,500 or reconditioned. It's going to kill me the same thing because I haven't done it. So that's just ideal. That it would keep saying the same thing. In this instance, it always starts with something that's green, and then something. If I pull that, I will make the pads unusable for later. So I'm not going to pull it. But yeah, and they all work just about like that. Yours is. This one I just got out of your, in fact, it's in the hallway out there, and it's got a thing that says, oh, don't open this or alarm will sound. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's lots of companies. No, Pulse Point is just our app to go help somebody. AEDs are purchased from companies that make them. There's lots of companies. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah, you can buy one, and the companies are all certified. I mean, it's not some guy making